Welcome to EJH British Cars. Well, the body tub of the TR2 is painted, so I thought I'd take a break from that and get caught up on some of the other things I've been meaning to do. So today we're going to do the Rover. Need to replace the bushings in the rear suspension links between the axle and the rear chassis. They're just well worn. I actually fabricated one out of some stuff I had laying around a while ago now because it was just completely moving around, which is not good. It lets the axle be out of line. So let's get started. So this is the Dion rear end, and it has trailing arms open to the chassis and mount to the bottom of the axle. It also has these links here, so you can see that those bushings aren't necessarily in the best of shape. And then it also has another one here that sets the left and right track. And the drive shafts are solid. I mean, they have U-joints, but they're not splines. So that acts as a part of the suspension as well. That as the axle moves up and down, there's a sliding joint right here, and the axle pulls apart. Slides together. This is the filler for putting oil in the tube. This is a gator that keeps the oil in. So today's mission, as we decided to accept it, is to drop this link and replace these two bushings. So let's get started. So the bolt goes all the way through. It's 5/8 on the head end, it's 11/16 on the nut end, which is fairly common for stuff like this, so you don't have to have two wrench sets. And pretty easy to take off with an air gun. So the head of the bolt on the rear one is right here. This is the trunk. This is for doing the right side, so this is just under the battery right there. Well, that's the trunk hinge. Straight down, and it'll be the same thing over here. We're going to take the spare tire out to get at it. And here's the link, and as you'll notice, this link has a bend in it, so it's not symmetrical. So I put an arrow to designate forward and a dot, multiple markings, just in case I erase one. But that'll be up and forward. This is the way it goes in. I also notice that the front bushing is larger than the rear bushing. So let's go in and get them swapped over. As you can see, we have a socket that's big enough to pass the bushing through, another one that's small enough to push the bushing. Let me stack it here, and then lower the jack. We just got the jack touching. I'll make sure I stack everything's lined up the way we want it to be, or centered in the press. And then we give it a push. And there it goes. And it feels like that socket's dragging on the link a little bit. Which it is. So we'll get a smaller socket. That feels better. Usually once these bushings start moving, you can feel a reduced amount of effort to push them. If you don't, stop and look at what you're doing, because you're probably doing something wrong. Go. There's the bushing out. Here's our arm. You can see the board's nice and clean. Here's the new one. Pretty much just the reverse of what we did. We used the same stack. Get the jack up high enough so we can get the socket in. Free hands would be nice in this instance, but just have to do with what we got. We're not pushing that all the way through, so we can't just push it on a flat surface, so that may make life easier. So I just offset that socket so it was only pushing on the side that was high, and that squared it right up. center. The bushing when it's in all the way is just slightly recessed, so I'm going to try and make sure my socket is perfectly centered. So it's only pushing on the bushing. I'm a poet and I don't know it. And there it is, flush on both sides. I guess we must have pushed the rubber up so it pushed that flat. So it would have been better if I had done that with these plates like that. I wasn't thinking. Oh well. It's a nice thing about a rubber bushing, it's got some give. So anyway, it's in now. Now we just need to get this one out. Same thing. There's the other one out. This one's got a little bit of rust on the inside, so I'll just take a piece of sandpaper and clean that up. I had to put a poly bushing in this one because you can't get the standard rubber ones for this size anymore for whatever reason. So I'll show you how to do them in a minute. Well, I was surprised. This is a one-piece bushing. Usually these are 2 halves, but it's not. So this will push in much like the regular rubber does. They say to install the steel tube later. You also want to make sure you lube the heck out of this and the bushing. And you also need to lube this and the inside diameter because on silicone bushings, they rotate around this piece. And if you don't lubricate it, it'll wear them out really quick. Anyway, so I'm going to go push these together. So I just put the rod against the big socket again because that bottom edge has got to come through. So you could start it without that, but let's start it with it. Not quite lined up. That's better. And away we go. So the big flames just popped through, got way, way easier. And that feels like it's all the way through now. It is. So I didn't even have to push that once it got further down, it just pulled itself through. Now we just need to put the sleeve in. This side that was the side I pushed against was a lot easier to start this. I tried there and it didn't want to go. So, and it needs to go just that last little bit, but I'll just put that in the vise and just push it so it's square. Anyway, so that's done. We'll go put it back in the car. So I've placed it back in, my arrow up, my dot up. And I've got the bolt on the other side pushed through. But this is just floating on it because this axle being down means it's twisted a little bit. So as you can see on that, that's not quite all the way in yet. A little bit of gentle persuasion. Bring it down. I was just looking. I wasn't sure where I bought this from, but this is Craftsman. It's a pry bar, but it's got a point on it, which is really good for getting the bolt holes lined up. The nice thing, this thing's got even a little hammerhead on one end. It makes it easier to push that bolt the last little bit, so I need to get that tube lined up a little better. So I'm going to use this big hammer, because if I use a little hammer, I'll have to hit it so hard I'll mark it. With this, though, it should just kind of push it, just tapping it lightly. I just saw that bolt jump a couple of threads. So let's see if that'll pull through now. And there we go. that one. So this is a kind of worn nylock, so I'm going to put some Loctite on it. On there. Got that clamp on there, and I should be able to go into the boot now and wind that bolt back through and then get the nut on it. So the final thing to do is we need to compress the suspension before we tighten these bolts down now. So they're just on and just barely snug. And if we do this, you'll see that the axle moves up. Just want to be careful we don't pick the car off the lift. And they talk about taking sandbags, putting the car on its four wheels, sandbags in the interior to mimic the fully loaded condition, and then tightening the suspension bushings up. I don't think we're going to go quite that far. As you can see, we've come up a lot, and we're not moving the body yet. We're moving the body now, so no point in going any further. Just tighten this well and truly tight. And the same thing on this back one. I got a wrench on the inside holding the back side of the wrench. Now we lower this down again, and that sets that at normal ride height the bushings aren't under any tension, and then they flex as the suspension goes up and down. This is what they want to do, and that way you don't get squeaks and you get isolated from the vibration from the road because of the rubber. And seeing as those original bushings lasted more than 50 years, I don't think I'll ever have to do this job again. Yay! So that's all complete now, except for putting the wheels back on. So, and of course I'm going to go do the other side, but there's no point in you guys watching that. Just in case you're curious, that's the replacement fuel pump I put in. It's a faucet, but that's the better quality one than the little cube ones. Not that I've ever had any trouble with the cube ones, but and it's set for the PSI that the carburetor needs. It's got a Holly on this car. You can get different pressured pumps, same body. This was just depends how big a spring they put in it. Now, one thing I did notice that was wrong on my car, the big end of that link goes to the rear. So that's on the bolt that's through the trunk. So the one on the right side was backwards. The one on the left side was correct, but the one on the left side, it doesn't look like it ever been off the car, whereas I can't say that for the right side. So when you install it, the link fits better. It's not quite as tight, and of course that smaller bushing fits in that front bracket a little easier. So anyway, don't forget to like, subscribe, join, and share, and we'll see you next time.